Yes, people, how we doing? So I'll just wait to see when it's active. There we go now, people. So we are live on here. So I'm going to be talking about a prisoner who was murdered over a pack of vapes, or rather a few packs of vapes. But this is an ongoing occurrence inside the UK prisons. And the extreme violence that is getting used in the prisons at the moment is out of control. Prison murders used to be few and far between, but now they are happening far too often, or more often than not. These should not be going on inside the UK prison system, especially over petty things. But I will tell you a bit about this case because it came up today when I was doing a little bit of research into extreme violence in the prisons. But I can see someone in the chat there saying, can't believe you can get killed for something so trivial. I've seen altercations in prison. Good evening, Jade. How are you doing? I've seen extreme violence in prison, and I've spoke about one in particular, which was over a penguin biscuit inside of HMP Durham. That's how trivial it can be inside a prison. So Jordan Neale has just been sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 16 and a half years. Now, this happened in HMP Peterborough of July of last year. So Jordan Neale had a disagreement with a fellow inmate over vapes before later punching him at least 3 times. Gareth Jones, who was the victim, was knocked to the floor unconscious and died in hospital the following day after suffering a bleed to the brain. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the victim regarding this case, but when I was looking into this case, I'm very surprised he actually got convicted of murder, because he took this to trial. Obviously, he wasn't denying attacking him or hitting him. He admitted to that, which I'll talk about in a minute, but he took it to trial and he was found guilty. Now, he hit him with 3 punches. He went in the pad and punched him 3 times, knocking him unconscious. He's went to hospital and died the following day when they've knocked his life support off. But for me, looking at this case, just knowing the brief details, obviously, but I've looked over it, that isn't murder in my eyes. Yes, he's unfortunately lost his life, but when he's been in a fit of rage and he's punched him 3 times, punching someone 3 times isn't murder. He's in a fit of rage. He's wanting to hurt him. He's wanting to get back at him because he's borrowed him money to get vapes off him, and he's obviously bumped him. And you've got to stand your ground in prison. You've got to stand up for yourself. He's thinking he's taxed me. He's not giving us me vapes. So he went and flew at him, punched him 3 times. And unfortunately, he got a bleed on the brain. So to me, that's like a manslaughter. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve prison because it's taken away from the victim's family, but it should have been a manslaughter, in my opinion. So we'll talk a bit more about this case. So the inmate was murdered in a row over vapes. Jordan Neale punched Gareth Jones 3 times in a cell, HMP Peterborough, on July the 12th last year. And that's when he went to hospital, and the following day, the life support machine was unfortunately turned off. But, and here is this is the reason he's been convicted of murder, because after the incident, he's actually went back to his cell, panicking, knowing he's done wrong, but then he's made a phone call to his friend back home, and he said to his friend, where he's admitted to a close friend, he had fucked up and killed someone. Those was the words he's used, and those are the words that has got him convicted on murder. He continued to say, he is not breathing, and I am looking at life. During interview, Jordan Neale, 27, told officers he had given Mr. Jones £80 and was promised he would be paid in vapes. The pair obviously had a verbal disagreement, been fighting nearly in the dinner queue over the vapes. They then returned to Mr. Jones's cell. Mr. Jones has spat in his face, causing him to lash out. So this is what I'm saying. when these two are together, this isn't a murder, in my opinion. And I do believe there will be an appeal. So the lad that's borrowed the money to give him some vapes back has actually spat in his face in prison. Anywhere, even outside, that's a high level of disrespect, more so in prison when other prisoners are watching. So he's lashed out and punched him 3 times in the head and chest. So all these blows weren't to the head. One of them was to the chest. So he's one fateful blow, but obviously he's a big, strong lad. He's fell over and bashed his head, causing a bleed on the brain, which has unfortunately killed him. So at Peterborough Crown Court on Friday, July the 18th, Neale was sentenced to 16 years and 6 months in prison. Obviously, that's a life with a minimum of 16 years. He was found guilty of murder by a jury following a 10-day trial at the court in February. So, like I say, these unfortunate set of circumstances. But the only reason he's been convicted of the murder is because of that phone call that he's made. That'll be the second biggest regret of his life. The biggest regret will be punching him so hard and ending his life. But then when he's went and phoned his friend, he's panicking. He's wanting someone to speak to. And he said, I fucked up. He knows he's done wrong. He's saying, like, I fucked up. He's not breathing, panicking. The phones, obviously, phone calls are recorded inside of prison. They've listened to the phone call back, and his own words of getting him convicted on murder. But for me, if he's up in court pleading his innocence, well, not his innocence, but pleading a manslaughter, saying, listen, I didn't mean to kill him, which he obviously didn't. He spat in his face. They were having an altercation. He's punched him 3 times, and he's unfortunately died. But that's what I'm talking about in the UK prisons. Extreme violence in UK prisons, because like I said at the beginning of the video, if you're just tuning in now, you will be able to see this once I upload it, once I finish the live. But people were saying in the chat over something trivial. It's actually not over the matter. Once it goes past the stage of disrespect, it's no longer over the vapes anymore. The £80 that he's given to get some vapes off him has went out the window. It's no longer about that now. What it is now about is the disrespect. He's been spat in his face. The person that died, someone saying in the chat there, he spat at him. The victim, the person who has died, has actually spat in Jordan Neale's face. Sign of disrespect. Obviously, he's then have to lash out because there'll have been a load of people watching. It's on a dinner time. It's in a queue. Loads of people walking past. But I've seen an altercation inside of Durham prison when we were going down for tea. And you used to get a penguin biscuit with your tea or with your lunch. So you'd get a little pack. Sometimes you get a pack of crisps and you get a biscuit. This lad that was in the queue, sometimes sometimes the surgery workers are ones that serve the food out the prisoners, like to keep some back for themselves. So purposely, they'll not give some of the prisoners coming through the penguin biscuit because the greedy buggers want it for themselves. So we walked through surgery and the lads start shouting. He's come back, says, oh, you haven't given us me biscuit. Where's me penguin? The surgery lad's shouting back at him, saying, you've getting it, jog on your way. He's shouting back, saying, listen, don't mug us off. So they're going at it. He's jumping over the counter. He's jumping that side. They're both chucking punches. The screws have intervened. They've both been sent on their ways. And that was all over a biscuit. But just because the screws intervened and got involved later on in the day, obviously they're both behind the doors, screaming at each other through the doors, saying you've disrespected us. This was all through a penguin biscuit. And it's all went wild. It all went west. So they're out on the yard later on, scrapping it out over disrespect of a penguin biscuit, believe it or not. But like I've mentioned, it goes out the window after a while about what the initial argument is over. If you're disrespected inside a prison, then you've got to stand your ground. If someone disrespects you, you've got to get on top of it. You've got to deal with it. Deal with them. If you don't, you're going to continue to be disrespected. But I'm going to move on to the high security prisons, and the extreme violence in the high security prisons are a next level. In them prisons, they aren't going to be using the fists or coming at you with punches. It's going to be proper, serious violence, as in hot oil, makeshift chivs, that type of thing. I've seen a terrorist got oil tipped over his head inside of Franklin. I also seen a terrorist tip hot oil over a Geordie lad, and I also seen some of the biggest, naughtiest lads getting served up inside of prison. And served up means getting done in, getting stabbed, getting slashed. And in Franklin at the time, some of the lads used to have 6-inch spikes, like a 6-inch nail, but thicker. And some of the other lads would sharpen them up in the woodwork shop on the grinder. And they would come back and they would use them, and they would sometimes put it in a bit of wood. So you can imagine that is a naughty, deadly weapon. And I did see it getting used on a few occasions. But that's just what's happening in the prisons. But like I mentioned about the murders inside a prison, if you go on Google and type in murder in UK prison, the amount of murders that have happened over the last 2 or 3 years is extravagant compared to what they used to be. It was very rare you would hear about murders inside of the UK prisons, but it's happening far too often. So thank you very much for watching, people. Remember to like the video and share it amongst your social media people. So take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and stay safe, people.